bulletin bread and meat. He was about therefore to go back to the threshold and eat what the suitors had given him, but the first went up to Antinous and said, Sir, give me something. You are not surely the poorest man here. You seem to be chief and foremost among all of them. Therefore you should be the better giver, and I will tell far and wide of your bounty. I too was a rich man once and had a fine house of my own. In those days I gave to many a tramp such as I now am. No matter who he might be nor what he wanted, I had a number of servants and all the other things which people have who live well and accounted wealthy. But it pleased Zeus to take all away from me. He sent me with a band of robbers to Egypt. It was a long voyage and I was undone by it. I stationed my ships in the river Egypt and bade my men stay by them and keep guard over them, while I sent out scouts to recount it from every point of vantage. But then the men disobeyed my orders, took their own devices, and ravaged the land of the Egyptians, killing the men and taking their wives and children captives. The alarm was soon carried to the city, and when they heard the war cry, the people came out at daybreak to the plain and filled the soldiers' house and foot and the gleam of the armor. Then Zeus spread panic among my men, and they would no longer face the enemy, for they had found themselves surrounded. The Egyptians killed many of us and took the rest alive to be forced to labor for them. As for myself, they gave me to a friend who met them to take me to Cyprus, to Metor by name, son of Iasus, who was a great man in Cyprus. Thence I come hither in a state of great misery. Then Antinous said, What God can have such a pestilence to plague us during our dinner? Get out into open parts of the court, or I will give you Egypt and Cyprus all over again for your insolence and importunity. You have begged all the others, and they have given you lavishly, for they have abundance around them, and it is easy to be free with other people's property when it is plenty of it. On this Odysseus began to move off and said, Your looks, my fine sir, are better than your breeding. If you were in your own house, you would not spare a poor man so much as a pinch of salt, for though you are in another man's and surrounded with abundance, you cannot find it in yourself to give him even a piece of bread. This made Antinous very angry, and he scowled at him, saying, You shall pay for this before you get clear of the court. With these words he threw a footstool at him and hit him on the right shoulder blade near the top of his back. Odysseus stood firm as a rock, and the blow did not even stagger him, but he shook his head in silence as he brooded on his revenge. Then he went back to the threshold and sat down there, laying his well-filled wallet at his feet. Listen to me, he cried, you seekers of Queen Penelope, that I might speak even as I minded. A man knows neither ache nor pain if he gets hit while fighting for his money, or for his sheep, or for his cattle. Even so, Antinous has hit me while in the service of my miserable belly, which is always getting people into trouble. Still the poor have gods and avenging desires. At all I pray then that Antinous may come to a bad end before his marriage. Sit where you are and eat your victuals in silence, or be off elsewhere, which shall get Antinous. If you say more, I will have you dragged hand and foot through the courts, and the servants shall flay you alive. The other suitors were much displeased at this, and one of the other young men said, Antinous, you did ill in striking the poor wretch of a tramp. It will be worse for you if he should turn out to be some god, and we know the gods go about disguise in all sorts of ways as people from foreign countries and travel about the world to see who do amiss and who righteously. Thus said the suitors, but Antinous paid them no heed. Meanwhile, Telemachus was furious about the blood that had been given to his father, and though no tear fell from him, he shook his head in silence and brooded on his revenge. Now when Penelope heard that the beggar had been struck in the banqueting cloister, she said about before her maids, would that Apollo would so strike you, Antinous, and waiting woman fearing no enemy. Answered, if our prayers were answered, not one of the suitors would ever again see sunrise. Then Penelope said, Nurse, I hate every single one of them, for they mean nothing but mischief, but I hate Antinous like the darkness of death itself. A poor unfortunate tramp who came begging about the house for sheer want. Everyone else has given him something to put in his wallet, but Antinous has hit him on his right shoulder blade with a footstool. Thus did she talk of her maids as she sat in her own room, and in the meantime Odysseus was getting his dinner. Then she called her the swineherd and said, You must go and tell the strangers to come here. I want to see him and ask him some questions. He seems to have traveled much, and he may have seen us heard something of the unhappy husband. To this you answered, O swineherd, Eumaeus, if these Grecians, madame, would only keep quiet, you would be charmed with the history of his adventures. I had 3 days and 3 nights with me in my hut, which was the first place he reached after running away from his ship, and he was not yet completed the story of his misfortunes. If he had been the most heaven-taught minister on the whole world, or whose lips all hearers hang in France, I could not have been more charmed as I sat in my hut and listened to him. He says there is an old friendship between his house and that of Odysseus, and he comes from Crete, where the descendants of Minos live. After having been driven hither and thither by every kind of misfortune, he also declares that he had heard of Odysseus as being alive and near at hand among the Thesprotians, and he's bringing a great wealth home with him. Call him here then, said Penelope, that I too may hear his story. As for the suitors, let them take their pleasure indoors or out, what they will, for they have nothing to fret about. Their corn and wine remain unwasted in their houses, with none but servants that consume them, while they keep hanging about our house day after day, sacrificing our oxen and sheep and fat goats for their banquets, and never giving so much as thought to the whole quantity of wine they drink. No state can stand such recklessness, for we have now no Odysseus to protect us. If he were to come again, he and his son would soon have their revenge. As she spoke, Telemachus sneezed so loudly that the whole house resounded with it. Penelope laughed when she heard this and said to Eumaeus, Go and call the stranger, did you not hear how my son sneezed? Eumaeus, just as I was speaking, this can only mean that all the suitors are going to be killed, and that not one of them shall escape. Furthermore, I say and lay my saying to your heart, if I am satisfied that the stranger is speaking the truth, I shall give him a shirt and a cloak of good wear. When Eumaeus heard this, he went straight to Odysseus and said, Father stranger, my mistress Penelope, mother Telemachus, has sent for you. She is in great grief. If she wishes to hear anything, you can tell her about her husband. If he is satisfied that you are speaking the truth, she will give you a shirt and cloak, which are the very things that you are most in want of. As for bread, you can get enough of what you fill your belly by begging about the town and letting those give that will. I will tell Penelope, answered Odysseus, nothing but that is strictly true. I know all about her husband, have been partner with him in affliction, but I am afraid of passing through the crowd of cruel suitors, for their pride and insolence reach heaven. Just now, moreover, as I am going about the house without doing any harm, a man gave me a blow that hurt me very much, but neither Telemachus nor anyone else defended me. Tell Penelope therefore to be patient and wait till sundown. Let her give me a seat close up to the fire, for my clothes are worn very thin. You know they are, for you have seen them ever since I first asked you to help me. She can then ask me about the return of her husband. The swineherd went back when he heard this, and Penelope said, as she saw him cross the threshold, Why do you not bring him here, Eumaeus? Is he afraid that someone will ill-treat him, or is he shy of coming inside the house at all? Beggars should not be shamefaced. So this you answered, O swineherd, Eumaeus, the stranger is quite reasonable. He is avoiding the suitors, and is only doing what anyone else would do. He asks you to wait till sundown, and it will be much better, madam, that you should have him all to yourself, when you can hear him and talk to him as you will. The man is no fool, answered Penelope. It would very likely be as he says, where there is no such abominable people in the whole world as these men are. When she had been done speaking, Eumaeus went back to the suitors, for he had explained everything. Then he went up to Telemachus and said in his ear, so that no one could overhear him, My dear sir, I will now go back to the pigs to see after your property, my own business. You will look to what is going on here, but above all be careful to keep out of danger, for there are many here who bear you ill will. May Zeus bring them to a bad end before they do us a mischief. Very well, replied Telemachus, go home, and when you have had your dinner, and in the morning come here with the victims we are to sacrifice for the day, leave the rest to heaven and me. On this Eumaeus took his seat again, and when he had finished his dinner, he left the courts and the cloister with the men at table, and went back to his pigs. As for the suitors, they presently began to amuse themselves of singing and dancing, for it was now getting on towards evening.